Hi folks, Dr. P here. This is Math 20-2, Quadratic Equations, Topic 3, Example 3 on page 27 in your workbooks. So in Example 3, we are asked to factor and solve each of the following binomials. The difference between Example 2 and Example 3 is that we need to factor out a common factor here first. If we take a look at A here, the two terms have a 5 in common. So our greatest common factor here is 5. So if we factor out a 5, we're going to be left with x squared and negative 9. Anytime you're asked to factor a polynomial, you always want to start by looking at if there is a greatest common factor that can be factored out. And if there is, you do want to start with that. And if there's not, then you can look at other techniques. Now, in this particular case, the expression we start with, if you do not factor out the greatest common factor, the 5 here, then there is really nothing you can do. You're sort of stuck. If you factor out the greatest common factor, suddenly in the bracket here, you end up with a difference of squares, which means you can actually continue factoring now. So in the next step, the 5 will just carry, and then difference of squares, we put in our two brackets. The square root of the first term is just x. The square root of the second term, the 9, is 3. And then we put in our plus and minus. So that's fully factored. Now we want to solve it. And we can pull out the binomials and equaling them to 0. So let's start with this one here. So x minus 3 equals to 0 when x equals to positive 3. And for the first binomial here, if we set that to 0, then we're going to get x equals negative 3. So our roots here are going to be x equals to plus minus 3. I'm going to do C as well. Move on down to C here. It's a binomial. It is not a difference of squares the way it's presented here. So we cannot factor this as a difference of squares, but 18 and 8 have a greatest common factor of 2. So we can factor out a 2, which leaves us with a 9x squared and a negative 4. And now this is a difference of squares, so we can continue now factoring this as a difference of squares. The square root of the first term, 9x squared, is 3x. And the square root of 4 is 2. And we put in our plus and our minus. And then to solve this, we pull out one of the binomials, 3x minus 2, and we set it to 0. And we solve it for x, so we can add 2 to both sides. Then we divide by 3 on both sides, so we're going to get x equals 2/3. Now, if we do the same thing for the first binomial here, we're going to be getting x equals negative 2/3. So here the roots are going to be x equals plus minus 2/3. For the rest of the problems in this question here, so B and D, you can look at the keyed workbook on Google Classroom where you have the full solutions to these problems. If you have any other questions about these examples or any other problems that you're being assigned, make sure that you join the Google Meet. We have Google Meets. I'm going to show it to you here. We have Google Meets every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at the following times. Make sure you join us and ask your questions. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the math be with you. See ya.